Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. And welcome to the Tuesday night edition of our program. We're live, we're national, and our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES. And I want to get into a bunch of things tonight. There's a number of things I'd like to discuss. But the first thing I'm going to talk about, and there are plenty, right? It's a new day with new news. Just to give you a quick heads up, President Trump had a cabinet meeting today. And you talk about transparency, and Trump invites the media to join him in the cabinet meetings with reports from his cabinet secretaries. And this is something we never really saw with Biden ever. We've really seen no other president do this type of thing in the past. Because even with Biden, the times that they brought cameras in there, it was Jill Biden running that last cabinet meeting that I saw. So it's just such an interesting, refreshing change to see the level of transparency that's going on in this administration. And interestingly, the other day, I put a comment on some local story in, northern New Jersey, New York area. And people that I've known for many years and some others that I don't know, strangers, a bunch of people, kind of piled on my comment because they didn't want a conservative Republican to be a moderator in a state or local debate. And I put, oh, got it. You're not very interested in free speech. And they were, the responses were just, oh, you're an idiot, you're this, you're that, don't you see what your orange king is doing? Don't you see all the bad things he's done, how he's destroying free speech in America? And I thought to myself, do I live in a bubble? But whose free speech is being threatened by Trump? I haven't seen Trump threaten anybody's free speech. But it's amazing the way the left will retort, and they are upset and they can't dig their way out of an argument. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there because, I don't know if you guys experience the same thing, but fascinating to me that that's what's going on here. Anyway, the Democrats, in addition to hating free speech, something that they love, violence, criminals, you know how it goes. Well, now a San Antonio City Council candidate is calling for shooting ICE agents. I'm going to get into that story in a little bit, but, I would say it's bizarre, but sadly it's not bizarre. There was 2 attacks on ICE DHS facilities in Texas, and you know who's silent? The left, completely silent. I haven't heard anybody on the left call for an end to this type of violence. In fact, I'd say they are the reason for the violence. This is what happens when you have leftist candidates, leftist elected officials, all of these people out there that are constantly calling for people to get in the face of ICE, doxing the ICE agents. For this reason, they have to wear masks. And then they turn around and say, oh, you got these masked goons, yada, yada, yada. And it's so unfortunate, but it's the reality that this is what we're facing. Yet they want to say we're the ones that are after free speech. You couldn't make this stuff up. Anyway, the culture wars, they continue as well. California Governor Gavin Newsom is now refusing to sign off on the Title IX mandates the White House put forth. And as I read it last, upheld by the court, right? So we're going to talk about this California refusal in a little bit later in the show. Because it doesn't come as a surprise to me at all. But what I want to get into, because I may not have time to get into it later because of the different topics we're talking about. We're going to get an update on what happened with Netanyahu and Trump in the White House yesterday, as well as all the other big stories of the day. But one of the big stories that came out of the cabinet meeting is the story of what Trump said about New York City, right? President Trump making some comments about New York City, in effect saying he would consider a federal takeover of New York City if the communist Zoran Mamdani wins the mayoral election. And I thought this was interesting. And there's a lot of things here. There's a few quotes in this article in the New York Post. But basically, Trump talking about seizing power of New York City. I know he's talked about doing it in D.C., which is, federal territory and whatnot. I don't know that can happen. I guess it can, if he's talking about it. It might be one of those areas where people, it never occurred to them. But, leave it to Trump to walk up to the line and not cross it. But the quote here is, if a communist gets elected to run New York, it can never be the same. But we have tremendous power at the White House to run places where we have to. And he went on. There's a few other things that he said here. Let me see if I could pull up one. There's a few interesting ones. Let me see what else here. Of course, Trump in the past has threatened to take federal funds from the Big Apple, and a threat that I think I believe in, and we saw happen, right? I think that's the reason why the Roosevelt Hotel is now slowly being emptied out, not because of anything Eric Adams did, but because of something that the Trump administration did. But he says, we're going to do something for New York. I can't tell you what yet, but we're going to do something to make New York great again. And we're going to make it great with the country. He added, I'm not getting involved when a reporter asked him about Curtis Sliwa. Should Curtis drop out of the race? Trump says Andrew Cuomo has capability. He's running, but he got knocked out of the Democrat primary. You have Eric Adams, the current mayor. You have Cuomo, and you have Curtis Sliwa. And Curtis runs every 4 years. He seems to be a fixture on the running scale. Now, Curtis has only run once before, so I don't know if that's a completely fair statement, but Curtis ran last time and won the Republican primary, and he's running again this time, which would only be his second time running. But Trump said about Mamdani that he's not very capable, in his opinion, saying he's a disaster. He got the Democrat nomination because that shows you where Democrats have gone. He actually wants to take over the grocery stores of John Catsimatidis. And now John Catsimatidis is the owner of a radio station I used to work at in New York City, WABC, a fantastic station. And he says Catsimatidis actually called me the other day, and he's concerned his stores are going to be taken from him. And this is obviously would be a concern for me, too, if I ran bodegas and grocery stores and supermarkets in New York City. But the bottom line here is, what is Trump going to do, right? He says he's got a very big plan for New York, a very big plan. Something big is going to happen. But when they asked him about Curtis Sliwa, his first answer was, I'm not getting involved. So Trump is not asking Curtis to get out of the race, but he's also not saying he's going to endorse Curtis Sliwa. And this is my thinking now. Is it because he, in effect, is the de facto new mayor of New York City, right? Will Trump use his federal power to take out the communists and be the de facto administrator, right? Now, I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek here. But my point is, I think all in all, I don't think we want to federalize New York City. I don't think we want to federalize D.C., although it's a federal territory. But I could see either case happening on the basis of crime, because the current occupant of Gracie Mansion, which is where the New York City mayor lives, is an absolute disaster. Now, while President Trump says that he believes that Eric Adams is capable, he and I part company there. I don't believe Eric Adams is capable. I think that Eric Adams is not very capable at all. And what he's capable of, we've seen, right? We've seen what he's capable of. He's capable of allowing patrons, a woman who was sleeping on the subway, to be torched by an illegal alien because Eric Adams has created a haven for illegal aliens. He hasn't done anything to even try and fight the sanctuary city policy. In fact, he doubled down saying, look, this is a sanctuary city. That's the policy here. Saying that, there's nothing I can do, when he was pushed after several years. But early on, he was all for it. Early on, he was all for almost everything. Right? He's on board with everything that they came up with until he was really in office and got pushed a little bit and started to soften on a couple of issues. Right? He was never part of the defund the police per se, but he was happy to always talk about police reforms and this and that, being a former cop himself. And he did not win the endorsement of the police. In that last election, Curtis Lewa got it. At least with the Sergeants Benevolent Association endorsed his opponent, and they did not endorse Mayor Adams. So, I mean, when you've seen somebody in office and you know what they're capable of, there's not much left to say. We know what Eric Adams is about. We know what Zoran Memdan, I can never say that right, Mr. Zoran M. We know what Andrew Cuomo is all about. Nobody wants to see any more loved ones be harmed because of his unscrupulous executive orders. To me, the choice is clear. There's only one person that can run New York City, and it's Curtis Lewa. Anyway, we're going to get into a lot of things tonight. Like I said, the disaster in Texas, the attacks on the ICE facility, and so much more. Keep it locked right here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
The President and I believe in the doctrine called peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes the peace. Our resolute action, the resolute decision of President Trump to act with us against those who seek to destroy Israel and threaten the peace of the world has made a remarkable change in the Middle East. The coordination between our two countries, the coordination between an American president and an Israeli prime minister has been unmatched. It offers great promise for Israel, for America, for our region, and for the world.
That, of course, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday in his meeting with President Trump and praising the work that's being done in the Middle East and, of course, trying to lay the groundwork for a possible ceasefire with Hamas in Gaza. I want to get the scoop on that from somebody who follows us very, very closely, Alex Traiman from Jewish News Syndicate, JNS.org. Alex, welcome back.
Rich, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So what can you tell us? I feel like there's not a ton of information coming out. I was hoping to hear the president and the prime minister announce the framework for a ceasefire and maybe something a little bit more clear. At least that was my expectation or my hope. What can you tell us? Can you shed some light on it?
Well, we were sitting in the White House press room for about 2 hours during the meeting and hoping that we would get the same opportunity as you to hear from the prime minister and the president after their extended second meeting in just 2 days about whether there would be terms for a ceasefire. Reports are that America is trying to put a tremendous amount of pressure on Qatar right now to get Hamas to agree to a deal. Israel's apparently shown a lot of willingness to close the gaps and to get to a deal, but of course they want to see their hostages back, and they don't want Hamas to play any role in governing the Strip on the day after.
What type of pressure? Give us as much as you know to help us have a little clarity here.
Well, the Qataris have been putting funds into Gaza for many years. The Qataris have been hosting Hamas leadership, including Khalid Mashal and Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated in Tehran about a year ago. And they have a lot of leverage over the Qataris. And you saw when President Trump went to the Middle East, he stopped in Saudi Arabia first. He spoke to the Qataris. He accepted the jet from the Qataris, and I think it was all part of a strategy to pull Qatar into back closer to American influence, and Trump now using that influence to try to convince Hamas that there's no future for them in the Gaza Strip, and to take some kind of ceasefire offer which would allow for the remaining Hamas leadership and terrorists to have safe passage to the third country in exchange for an end of the war.
Alex Traiman, from what you're hearing and your reporting and your sources and whatnot, how likely do you think we are to get to an actual ceasefire that's realistic, that will actually hold?
Well, you still have maybe 1,000 or a few thousand Hamas terrorists running around Gaza with submachine guns, and you don't have the same kind of organizational structure that you had in place before this war. So you have a radicalized population. Many of them have guns, so there's not really the discipline. I think, so even if there's a ceasefire that's agreed to, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end of violence in the Strip. And I would assume that Israel is prepared to move in and out, even after a ceasefire, to mow the grass, so to speak, or to take out terror nests when they pop up, just as they're doing in Lebanon, after the ceasefire was declared with Hezbollah.
Do you think ultimately Gaza becomes, or Hamas becomes, the new Hezbollah?
Well, there's definitely threats, and we've seen that reports that the Qataris are looking at Syria as a potential next base of operation for Hamas. If Hamas moves out of Gaza, of course, the Hamas would have to completely reconstitute itself, because it doesn't really exist as an organized as an organized terror entity right now. It's kind of like rogue terrorists or little groups that are operating without some kind of centralized command. So the idea of Hamas is not going to go away, but the idea is, the concept is that Hamas shouldn't be able to govern territory in a sovereign way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, I think this is my understanding of why there's walls surrounding Gaza, because most of the neighbors there also didn't want the Hamas influence in their politics. Is that right?
Right, and you would hope that you would see more and more of the Gazan people really turning on Hamas at this point. Even if they were ideologically supportive of Hamas on October 6th, and even on October 7th, even if they were celebrating the attack, the horrific massacre on Israeli civilians that morning on October 7th, even if the Gazans were celebrating that, they should look now and recognize that Hamas hasn't delivered the goods for them, and rather they've just brought nothing but death and destruction on the Gaza Strip. And hopefully they'll turn on them and recognize that you can hate Israel all you want, but Israel is stronger, and any kind of attack on Israel is going to be met with just unbelievable force. And so hopefully, it's that peace through strength doctrine, where the strength comes first, and that's when peace will follow.
All right, folks, we're on with Alex Traiman. We're coming right back. We're going to pause right here, and we're going to resume with 5 IDF soldiers that were killed, 14 injured by a roadside bomb in Gaza. More when we come back with Alex Traiman from jns.org and me, Rich Valdes. Keep it locked right here.
Rich Valdes, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
In your view, is the war between Israel and Iran over, or do those talks need to happen before you can?
Well, I would say that the best man to answer that is the Prime Minister. But I will tell you that, in my view, I hope it's over. Yeah, I think Iran wants to meet. I think they want to make peace, and I'm all for it. Now, if that's not the case, we are ready, willing, and able. But I don't think we're going to have to be. But I think Bibi would answer that question very well.
I think the partnership between Israel and the United States, the partnership between President Trump and me, produced a historic victory. It's an incredible victory, actually. It brought the greatest capabilities of the United States that are matched with the great capabilities of Israel and the army of Israel, pilots of Israel, soldiers of Israel, and the Mossad. And the combination of these two extraordinary capacities produced a decisive result. It set back the two tumors that were threatening the life of Israel, the nuclear tumor and the ballistic missile tumor, because they were planning to build 20,000 of these things and launch it on a country the size of New Jersey. And no country could withstand that.
That is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from the State of Israel, and explaining exactly what is going on, the latest with their efforts against Iran. And I want to get some analysis on that from the Jerusalem bureau chief of JNS, Jewish News Syndicate, the CEO himself. Alex Traiman is with us. Alex Traiman, when you hear that this is happening, I got to tell you, I'm going to use the word impressed. I'm impressed that Iran has been talking about assassinating Trump and all sorts of other things, but there hasn't been much more fodder. There hasn't been many more real action. And it seems like we may be making progress towards peace, or am I being naive here?
Well, I mean, the Iranians are not even admitting that their nuclear infrastructure has been destroyed. I mean, they've been saying that they have decimated Israel, that they blew up the U.S. air base, the Al Udeid air base in Qatar, and they continue to speak in public very harshly towards Donald Trump. I don't think that's exactly what they're saying in private, but they're not even conceding any kind of defeat here, and they're struggling to hold on to power, and they're going to double down. And if they do survive this, and this is the big question, if the regime will survive it, then there's no doubt that they would want to restore their image after being humiliated like this. So, I think that the military operation to take out the nuclear facilities and to degrade the ballistic missile production and manufacturing and firing, has been accomplished. But I don't think that the story with Iran is over.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's a fair way of putting it. I'm just thinking, I would have thought, given the way they typically posture, that there would have been something else, some other retaliation. And there was a lot of talk about cyber threats. There was some talk about they had already done a cyber attack and were holding on to this information about Trump and all these things. And ultimately, it seems pretty calm there. Even Prime Minister is saying, it looks like they've achieved this victory. So again, to the layman like me, it seems like the worst is behind us. But of course, I agree with you that they exist to destroy you and to destroy the United States, and that's something that's not going to go away overnight.
Right. And we just have to see if this regime survives, and they play a long game. So they might be willing to acknowledge even quietly what's happened over here, but they may begin to either to rebuild their nuclear facilities or to try to restore their ability to fire ballistic missiles at Israel. And if they can't attack now, they may attack later. And their strategy right now could be just to wait out Donald Trump, who's only going to be in office for another 3 years or so, and hope that you get another president like Obama or Biden, a Democrat, or you get some further right-wing president that just wants to be isolationist and would leave Iran alone. I think that it's a good thing that Israel's made sure that Iran is no longer a nuclear power or close to breaking out to nuclear capabilities. But I think the story is going to have to be watched, and Israel is going to be looking for guarantees that if they do see Iran making any movement towards restoring their nuclear facilities, that they're going to have the green light from the Trump administration to attack.
Now, let's switch gears a little bit to what's going on domestically, because I know President Trump made several calls a week ago saying that all the legal drama that surrounds Netanyahu, that all these charges should be dropped, that they were fake, they were phony, they were fraud, and I don't know that the left in Israel is going to adhere to President Trump's admonition to drop the charges. But talk to us about what's going on with those cases against Netanyahu and the quest to oust him from politics by way of lawfare.
Well, the Israeli left has been trying to get Netanyahu out for years by hook or by crook, and when they have failed to get him out by hook at the ballot box, and now they've tried crook. And this was a long planned campaign to try to get information about Netanyahu, where they went basically on a fishing expedition against his advisors, his circle, and they found something on a former chief of staff. And then when they subpoenaed his phone and his computer, they started to collect evidence and said, "Oh, what's this?" And they really pieced together cases against the prime minister, some for receiving gifts from friends that totaled over the course of many years about $230,000. Many of we're talking about champagne, cigars, suits. As the president noted, a Bugs Bunny doll is in the charge sheet there. And then there were other cases where they accused Netanyahu of bribery for trying to get better coverage in the media. And in the most serious case, the one where they have the formal bribery charge, which is a felony charge, after the prosecution called 200 witnesses and laid out their entire case, the court told them they don't have a case for bribery. During the trial, the court told the prosecution to change their charge sheet, which they had to change 3 times. So this would represent each time a mistrial in the United States. When the court tells you don't have a case, that's a mistrial. Not to mention that all of the evidence that they gathered was what you'd call, fruit of the poisonous tree. It was inadmissible evidence in a court of law because there was never a complaint against Netanyahu. And what I would say is that when you look at these two leaders, Trump and Netanyahu, aside from working really, really well together, they both understand the position that the other is in. The president of the United States, he went through politicized criminal prosecution. He sees that his colleague Netanyahu is going through the same thing. And I think you're correct, Rich. I don't think the Israeli left in the court is going to, and the prosecution are going to drop the charges or give Netanyahu a pardon like the president suggested. But I think it's a strong message to the Israeli voter that the president thinks that these charges are ridiculous. And more importantly, it's an indication that the president sees the value in working alongside Prime Minister Netanyahu and hopes that for the duration of his presidency, that he'll be able to work with Netanyahu, and Netanyahu is going to be in an election probably in the next year or so. So I think it was just a strong approbation of Netanyahu's work, and I think that it is a message that the Israeli public digested, even if the prosecution is not going to act on it.
Yeah. And, Alex Traiman, from my perspective, historically speaking, when you've had a president that was coming off of a war that, like this one, I would say, where there was a victory, it was decisive, he was, doing his thing for Israel. I feel like there's going to be a lot of patriotic sentiment that goes with the voter to the ballot box. My thinking is, do you think that's the case in Israel?
Well, first of all, the war in Israel is not over, right? The military operation against Iran might be finished, but there's still 20 living hostages and an additional 30 bodies that are being held by Hamas. We don't know what the day after in the Gaza Strip looks like. We're still attacking in Lebanon. We're still attacking in Syria. The Houthis are still firing ballistic missiles at Israel, and Israel doesn't really seem to have a very good answer to that problem right now. So, Netanyahu still has a lot to navigate to get this war to a conclusion, and that's what these meetings are about. But then there's the second part of this, which is the normalization agreements. Netanyahu really desperately wants to get normalization with the Saudis and is really trying to remake the entire Middle East. This has been his vision for decades, and fortunately it aligns with the president's vision, which is to create an alternative economic corridor to the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative.
Right.
That's an IMEC corridor that begins in India and goes to the Middle East with a major hub in Israel that would then send commercial goods over to Europe and the West.
Alex Traiman, JNS.org. Alex, let everybody know how they can follow you for more on everything you're reporting on.
Yeah, go to JNS.org. We're sending emails every day. We also have tons of analysis on our YouTube channel, JNS TV at YouTube, and that's where you can find us.
Outstanding. Well, brother, I appreciate your time. I'll be back in touch with you again to get an update from you. Godspeed, sir.
Godspeed. Thank you so much, Rich.
You bet. And amigos, your thoughts, your calls, your reactions to what's going on in Israel, what else is happening in the rest of the world. We're going to talk about that straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdes.
President Trump now says his administration will send additional defensive weapons to Ukraine as Russia ramps up its attacks on the country. Now, this is a reversal from last week when the Pentagon announced some shipments would be paused.
We're going to send some more weapons. We have to. They have to be able to defend themselves. They're getting hit very hard now.
And to that point, Russia has intensified its attacks on several targets in recent weeks. Just yesterday, a Russian missile strike in Kharkiv killed several people and injured dozens more. CBS News Pentagon reporter and producer Eleanor Watson has more on this for us and joins us now from the Pentagon. Good morning to you, Ellie. So what types of weapons will Ukraine now receive, and does the U.S. really have enough to send?
The Pentagon confirmed that it will resume sending additional defensive weapons to Ukraine after pausing certain shipments, as you mentioned, just last week. U.S. officials have not said what specifically will be sent to Ukraine, but what Ukraine has been asking for, really pleading for, are additional Patriot air defense system interceptor missiles. Ukraine already has several Patriot batteries and could use more, but what they really need are the interceptor missiles that can shoot down incoming drones and missiles aimed at Ukrainian cities.
Whether it's part of the minerals deal that we are embarking on with Ukraine, or if it's part of a loan, or whatever it is, the United States ought to give these people whatever they're asking for and, charge interest and whatnot and help them to protect themselves so that they can do what they've got to do. Why? Very simply because we said we would. And to me, I think that still means something, right? The Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurances is when the United States urged them, the Ukrainians, to give up their nukes in exchange for protection from the United States. Now, I happen to be from the United States, so I would like for our country to, not be hated 50% of the time, depending on, who's in power. And I think there might have been a time once when we really were America first, right, where we did the right thing irrespective of politics. But I don't think any of us was alive during that time. So now everybody's political. Everybody's trying to do their thing. And we've got these wars that don't seem to end. And why would they, right? If they're fueled by hate or real estate grabs, like the Russians trying to reclaim land that was theirs, a couple hundred years ago, whatever it was, or, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, whatever the case is. So ultimately, that's my thought. I don't know how much they're able to pay back, but I would suppose that as long as we connect it to this deal with the minerals deal or whatever else we're doing with the Ukrainians, it's what we do, right? We get time to make a deal and sell them what we do best, make guns and bombs. Anyway, I want to get your thoughts on this. Let's go to our buddy Paul. Paul's calling us from Boise, Idaho. Paul, shout out to our friends in Radio Land over there. Go right ahead, sir.
Thanks for taking my call, Rich.
You bet.
I'm totally in favor of Trump doing that. Like you said, promises made, promises kept. I feel a lot better having Trump be in charge of that rather than Biden. And Biden say that our relationship is ironclad when he's got a knife in his hand hugging you in the back.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel. I think Trump's making the right move. We may not like it because he's a peacemonger. Some people call him that. I don't agree with that, not at all. I think he wants to have peace on this planet so that we can coexist, like that bumper sticker says on some people's cars.
Right, yeah. I've seen that bumper sticker. It's a nice idea. It doesn't always work out that way, but it is a nice idea. And I think you're right. We need to help the Ukrainians so they can do what they got to do without footing the bill and without getting any further involved. And today, President Trump quite decisively said, "Oh, we have to go ahead and do that." And that's great that he said that, because had he not said something right away, there would have been a clamoring of I'm going to say pacifistic, isolationist populists that are part of the MAGA movement that would have immediately joined in the chorus saying, we no more forever wars and no more this and no more that. And listen, I get it. I get it to the degree that we're in the business of dealing with bullies, right? It's in effect, it's kind of what we do. And I know the argument from the other side would be, well, stop being in that business. But if not us, then who, right? That's really what it boils down to. I think ultimately you can't turn your back on humanity, and you also can't get into every fight. You've got to get into the fights that could potentially blow back on you, and it's not always that easy. Paul, thank you for your thoughts. I appreciate it. Good to hear from you. Hope you had a good 4th of July. And amigos, we're coming right back. The rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
You send the U.S. Marines into spaces they should not be. You send the National Guard in. You kidnap people off of the streets and pretend that's normal, because that's how you quiet dissent, because you make everyone afraid that if they don't do what you want, they might be next. And once you've done those 9 steps, step 10 is easy. That's when you decide there won't be new elections, because everyone's either afraid, poor, broken, or complicit.
That is Stacey Abrams. Of course, I'm Rich Valdes, keeping you company all night long. And Stacey Abrams says that Trump's plan is to never have another election, because step number 10, after you've quelched dissent and quieted down your dissenters, is to just never leave office. Now, I can tell you, I'm going to agree that I think Trump's plan is to never have another election. As much as, he floats Trump 2028 and this and that to drive the left-wing people crazy, ultimately, I don't think Trump wants to, even if he could. I mean, maybe he would if he could, but he's not looking to reinvent the wheel here. And the bottom line here is, you think of how many people are critics of President Trump's, right? So many people, and yet they're roaming free. They're not in jail. He hasn't done anything to anybody. I don't know who's getting kidnapped off the streets other than people that are in this country illegally, people that are getting arrested as a consequence of their own actions. That's not kidnapping people off the streets, right? But Stacey Abrams will say and do anything to, one, make Trump look bad, and B, try and make herself relevant again. She's a 2-time, maybe even a 3-time loser, right? But I don't think this is going to work out for you, Stacey. Anyway, we're going to continue our discussion on what's going on in Texas. We're going to talk about what's going on with California's refusal of Title IX and so much more regarding the news of the day. And, of course, your calls. 833-4-VALDES is the phone number. If this is the end of the road, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. Everybody else, I'll be right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be with you this Tuesday night. And we are live and national. It is 7 minutes past the top of the hour. It's a blessing to be here. Here is the phone number to join us on our late night national town hall conversation. 1-833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. And there is plenty to discuss today. Of course, there's a story I want to get into. In addition to President Trump and his big cabinet meeting that is always wide-ranging, that always covers a number of topics, that happened today, and it was very transparent, and lots of questions were asked, including one to both the president and the Attorney General about the Epstein files, where President Trump simply responded, "Are we still talking about that? We have so many big things going on." And I thought it was an interesting move to focus on the positive. And this has been my thought for a long time as well. Listen, I care a lot about the kids that have been harmed in this trafficking stuff, but I think it's bigger than Epstein. And I think from the very beginning, at least my summation of all this was, who really is going to get in trouble for this, right? Really. However they play it out. How many times do you see people get off? Look at the Sean Diddy Combs. And again, I might agree with our guest, Doug Burns, last night that said that Puff Daddy was overcharged and it was too aggressive of a prosecution. That doesn't mean that he wasn't guilty of those things. That means that they didn't have a case against him for those things. So he ends up walking on those. Now, he still could do 5 or 10 years from what Doug Burns told us based on the federal sentencing guidelines. But I don't know that that's going to, satisfy people when it comes to wanting that pound of flesh. But a pound of flesh is a pound of flesh, right? And that's kind of what this one person in L.A. was calling for. And this is, again, reiterating my line that Democrats love criminals. Well, the Department of Homeland Security reported that a San Antonio City Council candidate called for the shooting of ICE agents on the streets of Los Angeles. This threat was made by a self-described Democrat political consultant, and it comes as ICE agents are increasingly assaulted, obviously. We say it all the time, even by a congresswoman. And a Border Patrol station in Texas came under attack from a gunman. It was an ambush situation. As a matter of fact, 2 Border Patrol stations in the last couple of days. So what's good with this? Nothing. Not a damn thing is good about this. But the story, just to give you an idea of what's going on here, is, I'm trying to get the name of the person here. The council candidate, Ghana is what I'm going to say. It's the last name. I don't know why the first name isn't coming up. Anyway, this person, Ghana, is the candidate. Here we go. Matthew Ghana called for the killing of ICE agents in Los Angeles. And he said, quote, "I want to see a few dead ICE agents, Los Angeles. Don't let me down." I don't know how that can be construed as something other than, right? Like the fighting words doctrine is one of the tests that the Supreme Court imposed on the First Amendment. And those sound like fighting words to me. I want to see. Now, maybe that's the clarifying part. He wants to see. He's not saying I'm asking you to. But it seems on the fence for sure, right? I mean, it reminds me of a case where a mayor of a city called Union City, New Jersey, many years ago, got into an argument with somebody, and he said, "You want a punch in the nose?" And the guy called the cops, and the cops pressed charges, and he went to court, and he said, "I never threatened the guy. I didn't say I was going to punch him in the nose. I asked him if he wanted a punch in the nose. And he won in court. The mayor, his name is Brian Stack, actually ran against Brian Stack 20 years ago in 2005 for a state assembly seat. Obviously, I lost and he won. And he's still there. But the bottom line here is I don't know if this statement by Mr. Gauna has passed the constitutional test. But obviously, it pissed off a lot of people in law enforcement, and this is, obviously going to be defended by Karen Bass, who's constantly confronting the people from ICE and DHS. And I guess all of this begs the question, why do Democrats love violence? Why do Democrats love criminals? Why do they love this type of activity? Why do they not welcome the debate? I think most conservatives do, right? They're always willing to have the conversation. Most. I can't think of the last time I saw a conservative that said, I want to see a bunch of dead, blah, 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 right? I haven't seen it. But some idiots out there have taken heart and they've done this type of thing. And now you've got a Border Patrol place that was ambushed with fireworks to lure the agents outside of the facility so that they could then start shooting them. When the local police deputy rolled up to the scene to respond, he was shot by somebody hiding in the bushes. It was an ambush, and they shot him in the neck. And from what I understand, miraculously, he lived. Another officer was shot from another shooter. These guys had AR-15s, and they were in the woods. And they're, in one case, I think they're only alive today because one of the guns jammed up. But think about this, right? I've been doing radio for 7 years. And I've been in politics for 20 years. And in the 7 years that I've talked about politics and the news and stuff on the radio, all I could tell you is I've never, ever said the words I'm saying, that there was an ambush on Border Patrol and that they're lucky to be alive because they're gun jammed. I mean, the way we've normalized so much of the crazy is remarkable. It's not normal. It's not normal to have this conversation. It's not normal for people in one political party to embrace so much animosity towards the American people, towards America, towards the American constabulary, whether it's federal law enforcement or local. Just amazing to me that this is going on. And it's amazing to me that there's a whole generation of people that are like my youngest daughter's age that look at this and think, yeah, it'd be like that. That's just how it is. That's how people feel. F12, right? I mean, it's just bizarre to me. That's when you know you're getting old. Anyway, I want to talk about that with somebody who knows exactly what's going on with it. Scheduled to be with us in a little bit is former sector chief, border sector chief Randy Clark, who's going to weigh in on these ambushes, as well as give us a report on what's going on in Texas. The death toll in Texas has more than tripled since yesterday. The amount missing has also more than tripled from what I saw, or at least more than doubled. And horribly, horribly sad, right? I mean, I don't know what to say about these things. These things, I don't have words, honestly. And that's a rarity for me, but it's a horrible thing, what's happened in Texas with the flood, the victims of the flood. From what I understand, there was a flood there some years earlier, long time ago, and it's back. And, you know, there's some people blaming Trump. There's some people blaming the people that live there, saying, how could you do that? You know, the place floods. And all that makes me think of is, for those of you who listen to this show, you know where I want to go, right? You know, I live 4 miles outside of Times Square on the Jersey side, and I want to live in Miami yesterday. Now, guess what? Miami gets hit with hurricanes. It gets hit with floods. It gets hit with this. It gets hit with that. Matter of fact, I want to move to Brickell. And Brickell is like a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 on the flood zone meter. So, obviously, if you go down there, you'll see that they're building nothing but new construction everywhere you look. I'm not the only one that wants to live there. Lots of people want to live there. And they know it floods. So these are things that don't keep people away from things, right? Life is life, and we move on accordingly. We're not going to live waiting for the next big flood and move to a mountain. And if you do, then that's on you. Good for you. But I'm not about to live that way. But I am about to get a report from Randy Clark on what's going on with these attacks on Border Patrol, on ICE, on DHS, as well as what's going on with the latest with the Texas flooding. So keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdes coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. America at Night with Rich Valdes.
We're here to tell you that late at night on July 4th, Friday night at approximately 10:37 p.m. at the Prairieland ICE Detention Center in Alvarado, Texas, 10 to 12 individuals dressed in black military-style clothing began shooting fireworks and engaging in acts of vandalism at the facility. And this was part of an organized attack. Today, my office has charged 10 individuals with 3 counts of attempted murder of a federal officer. Each of the 10 are also charged with 3 counts of discharging a firearm in relation to a crime of violence. Each of these defendants faces a mandatory prison term of 10 years and up to life in prison. An additional co-conspirator was charged with obstruction of justice and conspiracy for attempting to conceal and destroy evidence in relation to the attack, and he faces up to 10 years in prison. Let's discuss the incident. It was a planned ambush with the intent to kill ICE corrections officers. Make no mistake, this was not a so-called peaceful protest. It was indeed an ambush.
Again, that is Nancy Larson, the United States Attorney in Texas, giving us an update on that first attack. Since then, there was another attack. And I want to get some reaction to this from our guest, Randy Clark, former border chief and border reporter at Breitbart. Randy Clark, welcome, sir.
How are you, Rich? It's a pleasure to be with you again.
Likewise, brother. Thank you for being here, Chief. I appreciate it. And obviously, this is horrible news to hear that, these ambushes and attacks are going on. But you heard the United States Attorney, Nancy Larson, just listing the charges here. 10 individuals have been charged with dressing in black battle dress uniforms and literally ambushing these Border Patrol folks outside. This is crazy, right? I can't remember ever talking about a situation like this on the radio. I've heard of Border Patrol people being shot in the past. Lamentably, that's happened. But I haven't heard of one like this where they're coming to you at the Border Patrol facility and firing fireworks at the place. I mean, it's so bizarre to me.
It sure is. And I think a lot of this started, early on in President Trump's first campaign, where we saw Antifa weaponized and trying to disrupt his rallies and, wearing the same garb. And since then, when you train young people to be, little anarchists and stuff, it's hard to control them after that, right? We're seeing that the Democrats are even sometimes getting attacked by these folks. And now, the rhetoric coming out of the left towards ICE and the Border Patrol is fomenting even more anger from these folks. But these folks, believe it or not, are super well organized. And this may be one group of 10 that's getting charged, but there are thousands of these people across the country. I've been attending some of the No Kings rally protests in Austin, Texas, in our state capital here. These folks come dressed with, dark clothing, masked faces. They're wearing already gas masks because they know they're marching through the streets of the Capitol, and they know as soon as we get in front of the cops or the Border Patrol, we're going to cause a riot. We saw what they did in L.A., so it's no surprise that these 10 did something like this. And remember, they are attacking our facilities every night in Portland, every night like clockwork. They did it during President Trump's first term. The agents that were protecting those facilities in Seattle and Portland, they worked for me in Del Rio. They're BORTAC agents. I'm not a member of that team, but they were in my chain of command as an operations division chief. And so we sent them from Del Rio, Texas, to protect those buildings on the West Coast. They're doing it all over again. It is not peaceful protest, right? We know that. And that's the sad thing. The Democrats won't come out and say, look, if you want to know what a peaceful protest looks like, look at what was going on in the 60s with Martin Luther King. That's a peaceful protest. This is not. This is an insurgency. This is basically putting federal facilities under siege and then attacking our federal officers.
You're 100% right on this. And this is something I got to tell you. I don't know if it's my ignorance or my own biases, but I've never understood how the Weather Underground, the Weathermen, the Puerto Rican separatists, how these people bombed federal buildings, and it was by and large accepted by a lot of people that it was okay to bomb federal facilities as some sort of protest. In my mind, I'm thinking, this is terrorism, Chief.
Well, it absolutely is, and I think we saw that start to emerge, during the Obama administration. We saw the standings, policy standings of the Democrat Party start to morph into where they are today, which is nowhere like they were, before President Obama took office. So I just don't remember at any time prior to that administration and the Trump administration when the losing party ever said, we have to do things to fight back, even if it means shedding some blood. We never heard that kind of language. When President Jimmy Carter, won, we heard, well, we wish him the best. You had, opponents saying congratulatory messages and let's all work together and come together. We're not seeing that anymore. And it's a tragedy, and the folks that get hurt the most, are the folks on the fringes that are pretty much propelled into doing this violence, like this young man in McAllen that's no longer with us. Thankfully, he didn't take any innocence with him, though.
Yeah, and now you're talking about the second attack. I want to get into that when we come back from the break because I think there's a lot to discuss there. But you're right. I mean, not only did this happen once, but it happened twice, and they were able to put this guy down. And I saw, the images immediately following that, and I heard Chief Rodriguez giving his statement on this. And I think it was an important statement that you had to give to say, hey, look, we're law enforcement. We're going to do what we have to do. This won't be tolerated. And I think that's a message that has to go out to everyone. But to people like me, and I guess the rest of the American people, it seems, again, just so crazy that this is happening. And I just wonder if the rest of America is as shocked as I am.
I would hope that they are. I think it's going to turn out to be a very, very losing strategy on the left's part, because this is just more of the same vilification of law enforcement that we saw during, the height of the Black Lives Matter, where police officers were getting shot in their sedans, filling out reports. That happened in the city that I'm in right now, covering this flood in downtown San Antonio just a few years back.
I remember they shot 5 officers. Randy Clark, Chief, stand by. We're coming right back to you. We're going to talk about this Texas flood and the latest on what you can give us. What a tragedy indeed. Folks, we're coming right back with retired Border Chief Randy Clark and me, Rich Valdes.
Rich Valdes, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to it.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Deadly flash flooding in Texas kills at least 91 people. Many are still missing, including children. The water came sweeping through without much notice early on the 4th of July. The devastation tore through a summer camp, killing 27 girls and their counselors. Now crews are searching through the wreckage for survivors. People locally are looking to help as more storms are threatening the area now.
Now, again, that report, I just want to add to it that it's now more than 110 dead, 111 actually, and over 170 still missing in the catastrophic flood in Texas. I want to get an update on that from retired Border Chief Randy Clark. He's the Texas border reporter for Breitbart News. Spent 32 years as a veteran of the United States Border Patrol, and he's with us now to bring us up to speed on what's going on. Chief, talk to us in this horrible flood that's claimed the lives of so many, including 27 children, girls that were at a camp. It's just a horrible story. What's the latest?
Well, the latest is, like you mentioned, the climbing death toll. The governor came out today and visited. He provided that statistic of over 170 missing, that has climbed even since he came out a little bit. So, these numbers are going to change. And he had predicted several days before. They've established a special hotline for people to call in for relatives or friends that may have been believed to be here that didn't show up to work after the holidays. This is an enormous area. That death toll includes deaths in 7 counties. One of them is Kerr, where the majority of the deaths occurred, and that was, right now as it stands, 97 just in that Kerrville area where most of the camps were that were impacted. You have to understand the enormity of this area because one of those counties is 150 miles away where the first flooding event came, and that was in San Angelo, Texas. So that was an entirely different water basin. It was the Concho River, and there were a few deaths there. And then it stretched all the way to Austin, Texas. So you're talking an area that is just hundreds of miles long. And so the good is seeing how this community and folks from all over the state have come together. In fact, even Mexico, a group of firemen from Mexico, rescue operators came in, and they're helping here. The Border Patrol's helping. The federal government. I talked to our Congressman Chip Roy and asked him what he thought about the response when I was in the flood zone on the first day. And, he had nothing but great things to say about the response and the community coming together. They have a ton of resources. They're asking folks not to donate any more material items because they have so many things. They can always use the money. They've set up a relief fund, the Kirk County Relief Fund, and you can get online and search for that for those folks that care to donate. That's what they do need. They can use that. The influx, the American Red Cross was there. So it's a great effort there. The sad part is the politics that always come into play, a lot of the second guessing. And that's really the sad part. A lot of the reporters in some of the press conferences, they have turned into more hecklers than actually reporters trying to do a quality job.
Well, let's talk about that because some of the reporting I'm seeing focuses on, there's people missing. Others are talking about the camp and whatnot and how the camp was situated. And others are reporting about the alert system and how that's under scrutiny and pointing the fingers at Abbott, saying that he'll address it in a future news conference. You being on the ground, is that the sentiment? Are people really talking about this emergency alert and who's responsible for this alert? And what can you tell us?
Well, so just, dealing with the folks that I have met in the area, and then my experience, as a Border Patrol agent, I live along the Rio Grande. In fact, my home is in a flood zone, and it's flooded. So, I'm all too familiar with how these warnings come out. And for every 1,000, flood watches that come into effect, you may flood once, right? This was a 100-year flood. That camp next year will have been there for 100 years.
Wow.
So, if you look at that area that this was in, the Texas Hill Country, there's 13 rivers that have their watershed there. So this was just honestly the perfect storm. The amount of rainfall that dropped at the time of day that it did, and on the day of the year, it was the worst day. That's when all of these river basins are full. If this could have been another river 5-10 miles away, you would have had something similar happen to a different town, because that's what campers do on the 4th of July. They get as close to the water as they can. These camps were full. And, for 100 years, that camp stood there. It's been in the same family since 1939. First Lady Laura Bush was a counselor there. Our former governors sent their daughters there. John Connolly, Lyndon Baines Johnson, our former president, sent his daughters to that camp. So nobody sent anybody there believing they would be in harm's way. But at 3 o'clock in the morning with, young girls in a dormitory, you can only imagine when the power goes off, it's pitch black down there. They don't have cell phones on them because it's a camp. And so there's very little they can do except try and get out. And the camp owner and the director from the Eastman family, Dick Easton, he lost his life trying to save these girls, as did other counselors.
Man, it sounds like you're saying it doesn't matter what kind of emergency alert warning system you had, it wasn't going to be enough to save anybody in this situation.
Not in this situation, because we saw the first, amounts of information concerning, the rain events on Thursday at 3 p.m., as early as shortly after 3 p.m. It really got serious after 11 o'clock when it's okay. This rain is not moving, and we've got, totals that are causing these rivers to rise. But it's 11 o'clock. Most people at that time are already in bed getting ready for the 4th the next day. They never knew what was coming. And a lot of people don't realize we've got alarm fatigue, right? We've got cell phones that are constantly giving us an alert for, whether it's an amber alert or it's a silver alert or it is a flood watch, a flood warning. And we get used to just praying for, I hope it's not going to impact me this time. And generally speaking, it doesn't. And in this case, these folks wouldn't have heard those alarms. If they come up with an alarm system that is audible, I've heard the lieutenant governor speak that may have helped. The problem with that is if it does go off and nothing happens, will people get alarm fatigue with that? So I think one of the best, areas, because there are RV parks all up and down these river basins, and the ones that were not impacted to great extents were the ones that were not in the floodplain, and they were on the, out of what they call the vega. They were out on the top of the river where you can see the water, but they're not next to it. Those parks survived. So that may be the answer is, hey, don't camp out where you're going to have these torrential flash floods coming through in a wall of water that's 30 feet, because you cannot evacuate in time, and there's signal issues too. I've walked that, river valley for days since this flood, and I don't have any cell signal. Even the police officers are having to rely on the Starlink to get any kind of service down there.
Oh boy, Chief, I have a follow-up question to you on some of the scrutiny that people have, but I have to take a pause right here. Are you able to stick with me for a few more minutes?
Absolutely, Rich.
Outstanding. I appreciate it. Folks, we're coming right back with Breitbart border reporter and retired border chief Randy Clark.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
You have given us the voice of hope. You give us hope, and we thank you so much for that. You make things seem brighter.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Unfortunately, in the wake of this once-in-a-generation natural disaster, we have seen many falsehoods pushed by Democrats such as Senator Chuck Schumer and some members of the media. Blaming President Trump for these floods is a depraved lie, and it serves no purpose during this time of national mourning. We know the National Weather Service provided early and consistent warnings. They gave out timely flash flood alerts. There were record-breaking lead times in the lead up to this catastrophe. There is ongoing flood monitoring, and these offices were well staffed. In fact, one of the offices was actually overstaffed. They had more people than they need. So any claim to the contrary is completely false.
That's Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, setting the record straight on the media's attacks, saying that it was Trump that caused this catastrophic flood. And it's never lost on me how critics of the president, or really the left within the media, will take any opportunity to politicize anything, including an unfortunate event like this one. Randy Clark, welcome back. Breitbart border reporter, former Border Patrol chief in the Del Rio sector. And Chief, when you hear reports like the ones you've heard, I'm sure, that are blaming Trump for just about everything, what's your I guess gut reaction to that?
My first gut reaction is I think it's absolutely despicable, especially in light of the number of lives that are lost. The young children. Texas is a red state, perhaps. A lot of people are attacking the governor for that. But guess what? We have a lot of blue cities. Our capital here, Austin, Houston, Dallas, has a lot of residents that vote blue, right? Well, their children don't deserve to die in a flood. And I don't associate, I wouldn't want to be associated with somebody who thinks that that's a good thing. But we're seeing that on the left, not just from, some of these folks that are very critical and say that Trump caused this. They want to gain a political point out of this, but I think folks are just tired of it. They're seeing through the strategy of, you're not offering me a path forward and a better policy. You're simply spreading hate. And that's what this is. This is spreading hate. You look at some of the vile comments made by folks on social media that somehow or another these children deserve this without knowing how their parents voted in the last election is just, it's pure evil.
Yeah.
And I would be the first. I'm close by. I've been to all of these little cities there where the rescue efforts are taking place, and I'm impressed. Like I say, I talked to Congressman Roy and said, hey, I can see with my own eyes. I was at the EOC. They have aircraft from the Coast Guard, and I was there the very first morning they started the search and rescue, operations. Everybody was there, from military, Coast Guard, local citizenry that have rescue groups themselves were there. We have merchants. We have, church groups, Mercy Chefs, American Red Cross. You can barely get in and out of these little cities because so many people are coming to donate time and to get in there and to search. So if they were missing something like we heard from North Carolina, I'd be the first one to report that, hey, we are sorely lacking in a response to this. But that is so far has not been the case even once, So, and I think that's if the federal government needs to do something in a catastrophe and a disaster, if they need to be there and they need to back up the state, who needs to back up the local governments? And that's the way our emergency management system is designed to work. In this case, the response was rapid.
Chief Randy Clark, you've got a number of really good articles. You've been putting out a lot of things from the Texas governor, his warnings to what's going on with the clash against ICE in Los Angeles. If people want to read your work on Breitbart, where do they go?
Well, they can get to Breitbart.com, and they'll find all the stories that I place. That's my exclusive place to put stories, and they can follow me on X at Randy Clark BBTX.
Outstanding. Chief, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. I appreciate the update. You are our boots on the ground, and we really appreciate it, sir. Godspeed.
Have a good evening, Rich. Thank you.
You too, sir. And amigos, we come back with your thoughts, your reactions, your input. 833-482-5337 is the phone number. And I want to hear from you on everything we're talking about tonight, because there's a number of topics on the table. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdes taking your calls on everything that's going on in America at night. And our phone number is 833-4-VALDES. I want to go to Vermont area. Of course, our Vermont station, WVMT, spills over into Canada. So let's go to Tony calling us from Montreal, Canada. Hey, Tony, what's going on?
Rich, always great to talk to you, and even your producer is such a gentleman. It's unbelievable. You guys are top of the heap, top dogs when it comes to radio. And, I'm sitting here waiting for my friends. We're at a Tim Hortons. I worked all day today, and I'm saying to myself, I want to talk to Rich about this guy in New York, Mamdani. And he's now trying to attribute to himself the political asset of being multiracial, sort of like Kamala Harris. I'm also Asian and also black. And, you know, like this chameleon, I call it pork pocket pigmentation politics. Like we got to get down to the base level, Rich. Like you got to get down to like, I'm from this ethnicity and you're from that ethnicity, so you must vote for me. Well, Martin Luther King never talked like that. Neither did John F. Kennedy. They said it's your character that counts. If you're going to be a leader and you're going to be a contributor to the country, we want the best people doing the best things to promote the greatest country, right? And now we're into this pigmentation politics. Like if you're on my side, you can't be on the other side. If you're like Joe Biden said, if you're African American, you can only vote for Democrats. Is this non-compos mentis politics now? Do you have to be like a base level where you know you're talking to like people that are easily malleable and easily influenced? Like I don't understand. I thought we were getting better, Rich. What do you think?
You know, Tony, here's my thought on this. I think that at times people will become tribalistic when put in certain situations, and the most common one I think that we see, and I'm going to say I've had the good pleasure of having some close friends over the years that have been incarcerated, and they all share the same story, which is when you get to jail, you don't have any friends, but somebody, usually from the race that matches yours, will come to you and show you some courtesy, and help you out with slippers and those toiletry items that you need when when you're locked up and you don't have and you have to buy them, but you have no money on your books, on your commissary, so you can't buy them right away. And a number of people, either friends of mine or people I've known or interviewed, have all shared this story with me that somebody came to them and was nice to them. Now, in some cases, it's not the same race they're a part of, but usually it is. And they'll tell them, listen, in jail, doesn't matter what gang you're with, what this you're with, or what that you're with. If you're Hispanic, you're with the Hispanics. If you're white, you're with the whites. And if you're black, you're with the blacks. And that's just how they divvy it up. And you may not get along with everybody in your assigned group. But I think that's an example many people might be able to relate to. But ultimately, I think that happens in politics. It happens in the street. It happens in organizing. It happens in a lot of situations in life where people say, you know what, I'm working all day. I'm at a Tim Hortons. I'm exhausted. I'm going to listen to some news, some radio on the way home. You're worried about, what's going on in the world, maybe a little more than most, but most people are worried about what's going to be on the table for dinner, how they're going to pay their next month's mortgage, and, things that people worry about. And the last thing they want to do is worry about the weight of the world. And when they're forced to be in situations like that, where they do have to worry about the weight of the world, then oftentimes they become tribalistic. I don't know. I'm Jewish. I'm going to go with the Jewish guy. I'm Puerto Rican. I'm going to go with the Puerto Rican guy. Now, when you become, I think, a little bit more learned, you realize, okay, that's probably not the best way to go. We should find out what these people stand for. But I think that's the reason for the tribalism, Tony. Anyway, thanks for the call, brother. I appreciate it. And a couple more people on the line. I'm going to get to you guys. The music means I got to take a pause right here, but we are coming back. The coveted third hour of this program is coming up right now. I see we've got our buddy Rich in Gainesville, Virginia, WMAL. He's calling. Rich, hang on. I'm going to get to you momentarily. Give me about 5-10 minutes, and we'll have you up. We got Justin calling in and a couple of others. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdes coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. We're in another hour of conversation with you all, the American people. I welcome you to join our program, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes. If you want to join us on our late-night national town hall conversation, I hope you will. I'm looking forward to chatting with you. Got a couple of people on the line, and we're going to get to you momentarily. But I wanted to just reiterate some of the news, because there's always something to talk about, right? We always have something new. But part of what we saw today is the case known as Russia, right, as President Trump would say, is being brought into scrutiny yet again. The FBI launching a criminal investigation into John Brennan and James Comey. And both President Trump and John Ratcliffe, who is our DNI, right? Or no, is that Tulsi Gabbard? What's Ratcliffe's job again? I forget. CIA director. To seek the end of the weaponization of U.S. intelligence. Now, as you might recall, John Brennan, who is born in North Bergen, New Jersey, where I went to high school, and James Comey, who was FBI director and is like 7 feet tall, they're both named as part of the subjects of this investigation for how they dealt with information, particularly information that was supposed to be representing the intelligence community. So CIA Director Ratcliffe referred evidence of wrongdoing by Brennan to the FBI Director Kash Patel for potential prosecution. The Department of Justice has confirmed the receipt of that. Sources are also saying that the referral was received, and gave a statement to Fox News that a criminal investigation into Brennan was opened and is underway. Department of Justice sources declined to provide further details. It's unclear at this point if the investigation goes beyond his alleged false statements to Congress. And again, a false statement to Congress is one of those magic charges they have. It's called a Section 1001 violation of United States Code Title 18. And guess what? They've put plenty of people in a lot of trouble for that, including former National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn. That's how they got him, and then got a gag order. And you don't really hear too much from Flynn anymore. A couple of political statements here and there, but they threatened him, they threatened his family, and it was brutal what they did. There's a whole movie about it. But the report of Brennan and Comey reportedly facing criminal investigation comes as Breitbart News previously reported that Brennan may be exposed to perjury problems after Ratcliffe released this internal CIA review of what's known as the Intelligence Community Assessment, in particular regarding claims that Russia had tried to influence the 2016 presidential election between Trump and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Breitbart News Washington Bureau Chief Matthew Boyle reported last week Ratcliffe declassified and publicly released an internal CIA review of what's known as the Intelligence Community Assessment, or as they call it, the ICA, which claimed that Russia tried to influence the 2016 election. So this is how this stands. What will happen? I don't know. One thing I can always say, when the government has something on you, they typically don't let you know. But in this case, they're not letting him know, right? This didn't really come from, it was like sources within the DOJ. So it could be that they're hoping that we go to town on this in the media, and that John Brennan will now make a misstep or try to bury some last information, or maybe they got his phones and he's about to call his boy, General James Clapper, and say, hey, listen, remember when we did that thing? Who knows, right? Maybe they're trying to set him up. Maybe nothing will happen at all. My guess is that nothing will happen at all, only because at the end of the day, I think you want to manage. And when I say you, I think Trump. President Trump, I think, wants to manage people at that level being incarcerated. Why do you say that, Rich? Well, I'll tell you. Because President Trump told all of us that he did not want to see the former First Lady of the United States go to jail. He was talking about putting Hillary Clinton in jail, somebody that he championed and cheered and said, lock her up, lock her up. And why did he do it? To draw contrast, to let everybody know this is a problem. What she's doing is criminal, and these are things that need to stop. Knock it off. And I got that loud and clear, but I think some people are really fixated on the accountability part of it, saying they have to go to jail. And I think Trump is truly laser focused on ending corrupt practices and behaviors, making sure that they're not able to happen again, irrespective of whether they go to jail or not, making sure that America's in a better place. So anyway, that's what's going on with that. Now, there's also this clip from Pam Bondi I want to play before I get to a couple of calls. Listen to this.
First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file, along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
So that, again, is Attorney General Pam Bondi firing back at the media, asking those tough questions on behalf of the American people who want answers, and I get it. I know not everybody is as jaded as I am, thinking nothing was ever going to happen anyway, because that's just how I believe these things work out when you have that much power. When you have a prince from the royal family and, Lord knows who else, I don't think you're going to have too many people perp-walked, including, former presidents, other heads of state, things of that nature. Not going to happen, right? And I think Trump had every intention of doing that, but realized, man, once he's in office and realizes the implications that it would have here, there, and everywhere else, it's probably better for him to keep it as leverage maybe than actually put it out there. But again, I don't know the reasoning behind this, if there even is such a client list, which they're saying there is not a client list per se. Let's go to Rich in Gainesville, Virginia, patiently waiting on WMAL. Rich, I know you wanted to sound off on this Epstein case. Go right ahead.
Okay. First of all, great show, Rich. You're fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm a huge Trump fan. I am very conservative. I agree with him 99.9% of the time. But I do not at all agree with the lack of accountability. We can sit there and say it's insane to sit here and say, oh, well, we're gonna take the high road and not do this, because the second the Democrats get back in charge, they will do the exact same unhinged things. Donald Trump, if he didn't win the election, he would be jailed right now. He would rot and he would die in jail. Period. I mean, for people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, who talked for years about what's going to happen if they ever had a chance, if they ever looked into things, and now they get there and I'm not a conspiracy, somebody told them, back off, put a bow on it, let's go. And the excuse that we all know, the tragedy in Texas, the war in Gaza, the Iran, all the things that are going on in Ukraine, we all know those are super important, but we can still walk and chew gum, because there is zero. The only, like I told your call screener, the only reason I'm not in jail for what people have done to me at times is because of the repercussions, just like everybody, Yeah. And this is insane. Take the be presidential. That's ridiculous. And Pam Bondi, that statement is unbelievable. I just heard from her. I can't even believe it. And to take a step further, Diddy is a different version in a different world of Epstein. So they had cameras everywhere. They never blackmailed anybody. They just wanted to watch themselves the whole time. Ridiculous. There was never anything in Diddy about about underage kids, about drugging people against their will. Nothing. In addition, isn't it amazing that I believe it's Maureen Comey, James Comey's daughter, prosecuted Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Diddy. That's amazing. She's the Peter Strzok of prosecutors.
Well, you know, Rich, this is where I weigh in, and I'm not disagreeing with you at all. What I am going to say is this is the reality of life, right? In my industry, I don't have any relatives in the radio industry, right? But I do have people that mentored me, and I know them, but for their help, I wouldn't be where I am today. But politics, working in government in these high echelons like Comey et al. What's the guy from Brooklyn that everybody hates, Dr. Fauci, and his wife, who was in charge of everything under the sun on the other side of the house in the same organization. When you have these large incestuous organizations and behemoths, if you will, that are controlled by people that still use a caste system, right? Think about just for a moment, and I know I have to take a pause here, but think about for a moment Karine Jean-Pierre, right? When she came into the White House, she was the White House press secretary, and who was she dating at the time? Suzanne Malveaux from CNN. Perfect example of how you've got the government intermingled with the media, and we see it time and again, and it happens so often that you don't see that everywhere else. Most people don't have that level of power or influence in their regular jobs, but that they do, and it's because of that. Because Huma Abedin was married to Congressman Anthony Weiner, and she was chief of staff to Hillary Clinton. She divorces Anthony Weiner because he gets involved in some sort of scandal. He's unfaithful and whatnot. And who does she marry? Alexander Soros, the son of George Soros. She's not unique. All of these people marry people with power within the structure because they're all part of the same social circles. So that is a real thing. And that is the reason why I think we don't see what we see. And I could go on, but I have to take a pause. Rich, thanks for your very candid call. I appreciate it. Godspeed to you, and don't give up. WMAL in the building right there. And amigos, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls. Georgia, Virginia, Illinois, and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if the viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Reporting for us this afternoon. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, Martha, this is still an active investigation led by the FBI after yet another attack on federal agents involved in immigration enforcement. The attacker opened fire early this morning outside a Border Patrol annex in McAllen in what Fox is told was clearly a planned ambush. Border Patrol agents and local police returned fire, hitting and killing the shooter, who was armed with an assault rifle.
There were many dozens of rounds fired by the suspect towards a building and towards agents in that building.
The Border Patrol facility was left riddled with bullet holes. One McAllen police officer was hit in the knee by either a bullet or shrapnel. Police identified the shooter as Ryan Lewis Mosqueda, 27 years old, with links to Texas and Michigan. The McAllen attack follows two violent incidents at ICE facilities. On July 4th in Alvarado, Texas, a police officer was shot in the neck after several people opened fire on officers outside the Prairieland Detention Center.
So there you have it, an update on that second attack on law enforcement on an ICE facility. Again, today it was reported that a San Antonio city council candidate said, I want to see a lot of dead ICE agents out there, Los Angeles. That is crazy, right? That is crazy that this is what's happening. But again, Democrats have never met a criminal that they didn't love. And it's a shame to see what's happening, but this is where we are. Justice Department, again, naming 10 individuals were charged with the shooting of the police officer in the neck and opening fire on the other corrections officers outside the Prairieland Detention Center in Alvarado, Texas. That was on July 4th. The group was wearing all black and began shooting fireworks. We talked about that in our interview with Randy Clark. And the second incident, the person was shot dead who did the attack. So fool around and find out. I want to get your thoughts on this, America. Let's go to Steve, Atlanta, Georgia, WGKA. Go right ahead. Steve-O.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. So I got to say it. Thank you. Rich Valdes. Over time, I'll get better and better at that.
Thank you.
So the thing that I wanted to say was, did you see the mugshots of the 12 people who were arrested by the police?
10 people, yep, staring at it right now.
Those are some ugly damn people. Look at all of them. The
Two
women
of them are trannies.
And the men.
Yeah.
I mean, those men have no chance of ever having procreated. Those women have no chance of ever having sex with a man. The only people so I have to ask you, did the chicken come first or the eggs? Because I want to create the correlation. Is ugly a leftist thing or is evil a leftist thing?
You know, I think these are misfit children, right? There's like an island of misfit kids like back in the days, and they ultimately become leftists, and then they teach others to become like them. They teach others to share their values, to share their hatred, to share their pain. And instead of seeking, for leftism to work, it's really ultimately Karl Marx's philosophy here, right, Steve? And in Marx's philosophy, you've got to eliminate God from the equation in order to have a good communist system. And the socialists can't survive if there's a God that's all provident, right? Because you're going to say, you know what, God will provide. It's that faith in the unseen that saves you from communism and socialism and being a left-winger. And these people don't have that, so they fall victim to it, whether it's because they were taught to or because they naturally do. But either way, I really do wish them the best, and you're right. Not a good-looking bunch, honestly a scary-looking bunch. But whenever you see these mugshots for lefties, it's always a real sight for sore eyes. Steve, thanks for the call. Folks in Virginia and Chicago, we're coming your way next. Stick around. We got more calls to speak with and more news to talk about. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdes.
Rich Valdes is now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Unfortunately, in the wake of this once-in-a-generation natural disaster, we have seen many falsehoods pushed by Democrats such as Senator Chuck Schumer and some members of the media. Blaming President Trump for these floods is a depraved lie, and it serves no purpose during this time of national mourning. Here are the facts. In the lead up to this tragic natural disaster, the National Weather Service did its job. Despite unprecedented rainfall, the National Weather Service executed timely and precise forecasts and warnings. On July 3rd, the National Weather Service office in Austin, San Antonio, Texas, conducted forecast briefings for emergency management in the morning and issued a flood watch in the early afternoon. Flash flood warnings were also issued on the night of July 3rd and in the early morning of July 4th, giving preliminary lead times of more than 3 hours before flash flooding conditions occurred. And the National Weather Service office in New Braunfels, which delivers forecasts for Austin, San Antonio, and the surrounding areas, had extra staff on duty during the storms, despite claims of the contrary. So to any person who has deliberately lied about these facts surrounding this catastrophic event, you should be deeply ashamed. At this time, the administration's focus will be on giving the victims and their communities the support they deserve during these recovery efforts in this tragic time. May God bless the great people of Texas, especially the parents who have lost their children. President Trump loves you. We are praying for you, and he will be traveling to see you later this week.
That, of course, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt yesterday, again, giving the media a little bit of what they've been giving President Trump, pushing on him, saying this is his fault. Between climate change and Trump, you can't get a win around here. I want to get to your calls. Let's go to Justin. He's in Fredericksburg, Virginia, WMAL. Justin, go right ahead.
Yes, sir. So one of the problems with, say, Martin, I'm not trying to make this brief, so I'll make this easy. So the Tennessee Valley Authority, when it came through under FDR, it was designed to rejuvenate the population as far as like workers and such like that. But you're seeing the ramifications of it now.
I'm sorry, what are you talking about?
So a lot of the floods, a lot of these 100-year floods, are caused by man-made. It's not against innovation. It's that during the FDR administration, to try to rejuvenate jobs, they put all these dams and river systems in for power to rural areas that they still don't have.
Gotcha.
Sorry,
No, yeah, it makes sense. You know, in New Jersey, I could see the argument there, but in New Jersey, that we make a road and break a road and make the road again and break the road again, and we do that just to maintain shovel-ready jobs in New Jersey that go to union people, and the union contracts are given to the same company time and again. Even if it's a competitive bid, it's not really competitive because because like two companies in the whole state that are able to handle that type of we're going to repave the turnpike, let's just say. And it's one of those like open secrets. And it's kind of like what you're saying. You know, they said, all right, let's build dams to get power to all these places. And everybody got a job, a super high paying job. And lots of families were doing well. And the money was floating all over the place. And guess what? They never got the power they needed because the whole thing was a scam. Years ago, Justin, I used to work with James O'Keefe. And James was my boss. And I remember one time he said, we're going to do we're going to redo Earth Supply and Renewal. And Earth Supply and Renewal was a skit that he did, one of the stories he did, where he would go to people and say, hey, I'm here with Earth Supply and Renewal. And he would dig a hole in the ground and then ask them to fill the hole that he just dug. And he would say, and that's what we're doing. You know, we're making the hole, we're resupplying it with earth as a renewal, and it was designed to get people to understand what I was talking about, right? You know, how the government makes problems that they can solve because it behooves them. And this is probably, a scam as old as the day is long, but this is how the government works, especially when they want to ingratiate themselves with their constituencies, whoever they be, whether it's union workers or a particular neighborhood or whatever and what have you. So, a really good point. I'm glad you brought it up because you're right. The building these dams and these canals and waterways and whatnot, messing around with that stuff and not really doing anything with it, I could see how that could mess things up, which will cause Democrats to turn around and say that it's climate change that's causing it, right? Instead of actually, taking a hit on the chin here and saying, no, that's our fault, and that's part of FDR's crazy deal that ruined things. So, Justin, good point, and thank you for your call. I appreciate it. And speaking of climate change, Congressman Joaquin Castro, yesterday, he was on CNN, and he was blaming climate change for the Texas floods. Listen to this one.
How much do you think the changing climate is part of what we are seeing go on here? Not just what we're seeing in the pictures that we're showing on the screen, but even the flood that you talked about in San Antonio in June.
No, I think climate change is obviously a part of it. These floods are happening more often in more parts of the country and really all over the world. And so we have to face that reality and be better prepared for it and combat it.
So there it is. We've got to be better prepared for climate change. Meanwhile, we know this is a once-in-a-generation flood. It hasn't happened in 100 years. Again, I guess we could debate this till we're blue in the face. But bottom line to me is, how do you prepare for something that happens every 100 years? Just like COVID, right? COVID was like, oh, we haven't seen something like this. Oh, got it. All right. We now know. We learned from the last one. We learned from this one. We move on. We can't sit here and continue to live in fear. At least that's my thought. I want to get to the rest of your calls. We got William in Chicago. I'm going to take your call momentarily. But first, we're going to take a pause right here. Then we've got Bill in Green River, Wyoming, and more calls coming in. 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdes.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-Valdes. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdes. That's Valdes with an S.
After the guest leaves every night, we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio, and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
You know, again, it's unconscionable at a time in which so many working people and poor people need government to show up for them, that this administration, the Trump administration, has caused so much consternation and division. Look, we are a welcoming city ordinance. Our local police department will not ever cooperate with ICE. Whatever their constitutional authority is, that is obviously relegated to the Trump administration.
That is Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. I am Rich Valdes, keeping you company for a little bit longer this evening. Our phone number is 833-482-5337. And again, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, at his press conference today, he says our police will never cooperate with ICE. You've also got Mayor Karen Bass in Los Angeles saying the same thing. And the United States Border Patrol chief, he was in Los Angeles yesterday, and he made a very, very brief but very succinct statement. This is Greg Bovino, border chief. Listen to this.
The federal government is not leaving L.A. I don't work for Karen Bass. The federal government doesn't work for Karen Bass. We're going to be here till that mission's accomplished, as I said, and better get used to us now, because this is going to be normal very soon.
So I want to know, what do you guys think about what's going on with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and the rest of these crazies? Let's go ahead and check in with William, calling us from Chicago, Illinois. WLS in the building. William, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdes.
Good evening, Rich.
Hola.
The nighttime people that I work with, they love you, okay? I've turned you on to so many people, and they really care that you tell the truth.
Well, I appreciate that, brother. Thank you. And what's on your mind? What do you think about Brandon Johnson?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to bite my tongue on that one.
Well, when he says that the Chicago police are never going to cooperate with ICE, do you think that's even legal?
Nope, and nope.
How, I mean, I remember not that long ago, that you guys had illegal aliens sleeping inside the police station. It was a huge problem. You remember that?
Still do.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's brutal.
Yeah. Yep, it is. You know, I live in the bluest town in the nation, as far as I know. And you know what? I'll be honest with you, straight up. You know, it's not fair to us hardworking, tax-paying people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and illegals are just that. They're illegal. They shouldn't even be here. No offense to anyone, but just the truth.
Yeah, well, I think that's what Tom Homan and President Trump and, you know, a lot of people that voted for this, they agree, right? It's not that we don't want immigration. We just want a legal immigration system where people that are vetted and needed in the country come in. And we don't want to undercut our own labor supply. We don't want to. They do this in every country. You know, I've talked to illegal immigrants about this, and they're like, listen, I'm not mad at Trump. He's doing what he's got to do. But I think everybody's on the same page with this stuff. So I think you make a really valid point here, William. And I wanted to take a moment not only to thank you for your kind words, but also to send a shout out to everybody that you work with on the late shift there that listens to the show. Big shout out to all of you guys, William's buddies in Chicago, listening on WLS. I appreciate the listenership. And we continue. Let us see. With, let's go here. This is a good one. Let's go to Corey calling us from Williamsport, Pennsylvania, WWPA. Corey, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdes.
Thank you, Rich, for taking my call.
Sure.
Hey, I was just calling to ask you what your thoughts were as far as the rain situation down at the Guadalupe River in Texas. Do you think that could possibly be man-made, that storm, that cloudburst? Let me just continue. You know, man has been making rain with CO2 and dry ice with some other chemicals since the Vietnam War, from what I've seen and from what I read in encyclopedias. It's not a hard task for man to make rain with planes. So wouldn't that be very evil and demonic for man to make that storm and create that flood? Do you think it's possible? Do you think
Yeah, well, let me take them one at a time because you're throwing a lot at me. So the first thing I'll say is, of course it's possible, right? We saw the Chinese Olympics a couple of years ago, maybe 2020. I think it was the 2020 Olympics. They had the Winter Olympics there, if I'm not mistaken. And China was lacking some snow for some of the competitive skiing events. And they went ahead and produced snow because unlike the United States, China brags about their weather modification program, which is part of their government research. In the United States, we really don't ever talk about it, right? Not President Trump, nobody in our government really ever says, hey, the United States, weather modification program or weather research agency. We never talk about those things. And I would be very hard pressed to believe at all that China is able to make it snow when they need snow for the Olympics, but the United States doesn't have this capability, right? And it probably goes to the same thing as why we're moving on from Jeffrey Epstein. There are certain things I think that happen in our government that they will classify and not share publicly for whatever myriad of reasons. Whether we agree with them or disagree with them is a separate conversation. But I think there's a lot of things like, just kind of what Pam Bondi was talking about, the Attorney General, when she said, I was talking about these case files on my desk with respect to Epstein, JFK, MLK. These are all big events in the United States history that remain unanswered in the minds of many Americans. And here we are, a quarter century, a full half century later in many cases, and no answers, right? And of course that's by design because it's not to torment people. It's to, in somebody's opinion, to protect people. Who they're protecting, I don't know. I don't think they're protecting me, right? Like some of my QAnon friends, they all tell me, they're like, no, because the public isn't ready for that. I'm like, bro, who are you to decide what the public is ready for, right? Every time there's breaking news, Whether you're ready for it or not, I'm going to give it to you if it's coming across my desk. So I get what you're saying. Could it have happened? Sure. I'm looking at a Newsweek article right now. Cloud seeding operations have covered about 1/6 of Texas, spanning approximately 31 million acres across the northwest and south regions as far back as 2022, according to Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. So the Texas government is talking about cloud seeding. Their projects have included the West Texas Weather Modification Association, South Texas Weather Modification Association, Panhandle Groundwater Conservation District, Trans-Pecos Weather Modification Association, and the Rolling Plains Water Enhancement Project, each targeting millions of acres. Why this stuff matters? Because weather modification has become entangled in political debate. Recent events, such as the deadly flooding in Texas Hill Country and subsequent political commentary, have once again brought the topic to the forefront. And that's exactly what we're doing here, right? We're having a conversation about this. So is the answer, I don't know if we can produce a flood of magnitude. I'm not a science major. But I can say, can we make it rain? Sure we can. How much of that rain can we produce? I don't know. Are there other things we could do? Who knows? I don't put too many things past the capability of our government. I think we're a very capable government. For many different reasons, probably in the name of national security, to make sure the farmers never run out of, they never really face a drought that could kill us all where we can't have food. There probably is a way to make it rain en masse, beyond the cloud seeding that we know about. Did it happen? I couldn't tell you. Anyway, I appreciate the conversation. Coming right back, calls from Wyoming and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdes keeping you company. 833-482-5337 is the number. I want to go to Bill in Green River, Wyoming on KUGR. Bill, go right ahead.
All of this rain came off of a hurricane on the west coast of Mexico, got pulled up by the jet stream, and the New Braunfels and San Antonio National Weather Service stations were both reporting on increasing amounts of rain, massive amounts of rain, starting at 11 a.m. the day before the storm got there. But nobody was listening to the National Weather Service, the NOAA Weather Service.
You know what? Well, what I learned tonight, Bill, was that from Border Chief Randy Clark, retired Border Chief, was that many of the people at these camps didn't have cell phone reception to get these alerts down there. And in particular, the kids that were at the camp weren't even allowed to use their cell phones down there. So that was part of why they weren't getting these things. And I think the other part of it was they hear these things pretty often, and, they kind of weather the storm. It's kind of like telling my friends in Miami, hey, there's a hurricane coming, and you need to evacuate. And they put up a plywood on their window and crack open a bottle of whiskey, and they get ready for 2 days of being shut in. Bill, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Shout out to KUGR. Amigos, thank you for another amazing night. Thank you for letting me into your home. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdes.